Hello again and welcome to The Luxury of Choice, a B2B technical sales and business podcast brought to you by the training team of George James Limited. My name is Steve Vaughan. I'm one of the training team here at George James and I'm also the host and producer of this podcast. Today I've got two colleagues with me on the panel, Jonathan Cooper and Pascal Floch. And I think I'm right in saying for all of us, we're a bit happier, it's a bit cooler. It's been a warm week, guys. It's been really, really hot here in Oxfordshire. What was it like in France this week, Pascal? Was it warm for you?
Yeah, it varied depending on the regions of France. But let's say that I was quite lucky here in North Finistère because the temperature were not so high compared to...
Was it a bit warm up in the north of England, Jonathan?
Yeah, it cracked above freezing for one day. It was good. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been lovely up here, and it was nice to. I've timed it beautifully. I haven't been travelling this week, so it's been nice. Got my lettuce seeds planted, and they've already sprouted in the greenhouse. So hey,
Perfect.
Can't beat it, can you?
Well, I guarantee it's going to rain non-stop next week because the test match season starts next week. So it's bound to start raining non-stop when England are playing cricket. Anyway, this isn't The Rest is Cricket. This is The Luxury of Choice. So what's our topic today? We've got an intriguing title for the podcast today. The Sales Manager's Playbook, Coaching versus Controlling, or we could also say directing, I suppose, as well. So this is one for the sales managers, but if you're a salesperson, don't tune off because this is equally applicable for you as well. So what we're going to look at today really is the difference between coaching and telling really, or coaching and directing. You know, as managers, hopefully we do a bit of both of that really. But I think in my experience, sales managers, particularly inexperienced sales managers, tend to default too often to the telling and directing and a bit less of the coaching. So first of all, guys, why is this an issue, or am I overplaying this? In your experience, Jonathan, is directing too much and not giving people coaching a challenge in our industry?
Yeah, I don't think you're overplaying it at all. And could I just say to anyone who's listening who's truly mastered this, then well done.
Yeah,
because I think it's actually one of the hardest things that for most sales managers to overcome. I think this tendency, this natural tendency, I think largely driven by this natural style to be very directive and be quite controlling. I think that's at the heart of the problem really. And if you combine that with often people in a hurry because they've got a ton of stuff to do, it's a pretty lethal combination. And I think sometimes, people think they've been coaching. Actually, they've not been coaching at all. Then, of course, against that, we have the backdrop of situational leadership, which I'm sure will come up in this conversation. So
we've covered before.
Response would be that, Steve. My immediate thoughts that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have covered situational leadership in a previous pod, but I'm sure we will go there again. Pascal, I mean, you're somebody with coaching qualifications. Let's go right to the basic. What does coaching actually mean? What is coaching? What is a definition of coaching?
Yeah, thanks, Steve, for asking this question, because there is a lot of a misunderstanding or interpretation about the word of coaching. What it means really. So it's everything except giving let's say advices, recommendations, or telling people what to do. Coaching is the art of questioning.
Yeah.
So that people, when they have a question, they have to reflect, they have to think, and they will bring their own solutions. So doing so, as a manager, you will educate and enable people, let's say empowering people, to increase their autonomy and responsibility sense.
Yeah. So it's giving people the scope and not quite the freedom perhaps, but the ability to say, you work it out, you develop your plan, you make it happen, I'm here to support you, rather than coming in and saying, you should be doing this, have you done that, when have you done this, why haven't you done that, and so on, really. I guess that's what we're saying, guys, really, yeah?
Yeah, and somebody once gave me a great definition of coaching. I've never seen it written in a book, so, to the person that gave me this, if you're listening to this podcast, you'll know who you are. They said it's taking people on a journey of self-discovery. A really grand title, isn't it? But actually, it struck a chord with me. I always felt that was, truly meaningful as one of several definitions, I'm sure. But I really love that because that really helps you understand, as a manager when you're coaching, what you should be doing with your salespeople or the people in your team, whichever. So yeah,
great point.
Yeah.
And I'm going to embarrass you now, Jonathan. Not that I do that very often, but I'm going to embarrass you today. So one of the main reasons that I have had the career that I've had, and I'm in the role that I've had now, is that you were my coach a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
15 plus years ago now. And I think, if I may, just bear with me for a minute or two, guys, because I think it's a great scenario for what we're discussing today. So at the particular time, I was, recently promoted senior manager in an organization, and I was quite conflicted that I was being asked to do one thing by my boss, but actually my job description was something very different at the time. And I remember you coaching me significantly, Jonathan, and at the time, I just wanted you to tell me what to do. I remember saying, but Jonathan, what do I do? Tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't tell me what to do because you were coaching me. Do you remember that time?
I do. Yeah, vividly, Steve. Yeah. There are many things that embarrass me, but strangely enough, this isn't one of them. So, but no, I do. And I think, and I think that's, as a manager, I think it's really important to hold that thought in your mind when you go into a coaching session. Yes, there is, always an opportunity to share experiences, to share ideas at some point during a coaching conversation. But initially, no, it is absolutely, in this case, Steve, getting you to think this through, consider the issues and find a way through this for yourself. Because if you were able to do that, and you did successfully, then, it normally means you've got this great ownership of it, there's great commitment to it. Yeah, so the real skill of the coach is being able to ask, as Pascal, has clearly said, being able to ask great questions and actively listen is extremely important. If you're going to be a really, really good coach. I mean, it's interesting for sales people that become sales managers, and any salespeople listening to this who aspire to be managers in the future. Here is a critical skill and capability that you take as a salesperson. And you have to take that forward, into a managerial role.
Sure.
But it's amazing how many managers I meet who really struggle with this concept of, and for the reason I think I stated right at the beginning, it is just pure time pressure and this natural desire just to get on with it. And because their natural leadership style is directive, they've got a strong preference for that. Then, that's when it all goes wrong. And it's not coaching, it is telling. It's in one ear and it goes out of the other. And it almost no impact.
So, I mean, I'm sure you're right. So Pascal, so managers listen to this call. I'm sure many do aspire to be great coaches, really. But I guess what stops it? Because I think in our experience, it is a weak point is perhaps too strong a word, but something which managers do struggle with, as you say. So what is it, Pascal? Is it purely because they're under so much pressure, or are there other things going on there?
A couple of elements could let's say, push or motivate managers to go back to telling stuff or things instead of asking questions and coaching. One of them is, of course, the time pressure, the pressure on the results as well.
Yeah.
When the team is behind the targets, then managers may have a tendency to get things happening in their way, meaning that they will start to push and because they want things happening and they know how they were successful in the past as a salesperson. So they may be tempted to tell their team to do their way. Okay.
Yeah.
So all in all, I think that maybe managers may disagree, the ones listening this call, but we have to be honest. Quite often we want to go back on the control. And why? Because we are afraid of the fear of losing control.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Pascal, I remember when I was a new manager particularly, I felt very uneasy about this. And it's a great point you raise here. I absolutely vividly remember a coaching session with one of my salespeople, and he came up with an approach that he was going to take to this account. And I kept thinking, this isn't going to work. That's not how I would have done it. But I decided to trust the advice that I'd been given, the training that I actually had. And I was very lucky. I got some fantastic training around this a long time ago. And I decided to trust it. And it was a revelation for me It really did. It just showed that, it works. Okay. We're all different. Although the outcome that we were seeking was exactly the same, as I learned a long time ago, there's more than one way to achieve something sometimes. And I think you're right. There's that inherent bias that we just have, about we want to do it this way because it worked for us.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for somebody else. The end result's what we want. Okay. So yeah, good. I really love that one, Pascal.
I guess it also depends on how we were managed as salespeople ourselves. If that was how we were managed, we were told what to do, then I guess you learn by your own experiences, don't you, really, and apply that in your own management style. What about, Prue, my colleague Prue talks about the sales manager's dilemma in this situation, really. And what about when you've got that sort of that big deal, and you're going in to see the customer together and the salesperson's come up with their approach and you coach them around it. But in your heart of heart, you're thinking, I don't think that's going to work. And we can't afford to lose this one because if this one slips, I don't know where the next one's going to come from. And, we're going to miss the forecast and stuff. So, and I've been in that scenario, both sides of that conversation many times. Yeah. I'm sure you both have as well. So how do we handle that one? What do we do? How do we, what's the best practice when we've got that kind of scenario, guys? What do you think, Pascal?
Yeah, first of all, I think a key component here, or a key success factor, is about preparation.
Yeah.
What I mean by preparation is that both the salesperson and his or her manager discussing together about this key deal that we have to win. Because it's during the preparation time that if, each of the two persons, involved into the deal, at least two persons, they have different opinions or different visions, they can challenge themselves and they can explore options and so on. And more important than this, they can agree about the respective roles, especially if they are in front of customers together.
Yeah.
Okay. And preparing the scenarios and what the customers could argue or provide as questions or whatever, So you just prepare different scripts related to the scenarios you can imagine in front of the customers.
Yeah, so, super points.
There are many other things to discuss, but Jonathan to provide his insight.
I want you to answer this one. Go on.
Yeah, I've got a slightly different view of this. Okay. So I would say if the deal's business critical, right? Then if you are, as a sales manager, if you're making a joint visit with one of your salespeople, to a customer on a business critical deal, then for me, the primary objective of that joint visit should be to secure the business, right? That's the key. That's the key for me. It should not explicitly be, a joint visit where actually the primary focus will be to coach the salesperson on a specific, skill, right? Something like that. Of course, we can use it as a fantastic coaching opportunity afterwards. But, I always say, rightly or wrongly, and I know I have a strong opinion. It doesn't mean I'm right. Okay, I could be wrong. And I'm sure there may be some listeners saying, you're wrong, Jonathan, you're wrong. And that's okay. But to me, separate the two things. If it's a critical piece of business, you go there as the sales manager to support the salesperson, win that deal. And I completely agree, Pascal. The prep's key, the role definition is key. Who's going to say what to whom and when, etc. All of that is really important, right? Clear purpose, all of that stuff. And of course, as I said, it's great for coaching afterwards. But some of the best coaching visits, I think back when I was a salesperson and had some amazing coaching from a particular sales manager who I remember with huge fondness. And he chose those times to coach me in the field very, very carefully. It was normally in a low, what I'd call a low risk environment, i.e. if I messed up or I got something wrong, it didn't actually matter. So more often than not, we ended up in an account that never bought from us, right? As a supplier, they had a huge preference for somebody else. What a fantastic place to go learn. But I distinctly remember several large deals where he was with me. The primary objective was, we need to get this deal done and get it over the line. And there was a coaching conversation afterwards. So that's, as you can tell, I feel very strongly about it.
I suppose there'd be no prizes in going back and seeing the overall manager of the business saying, well, we lost the order, but it was a great coaching meeting.
Yeah.
No, well, I guess that doesn't work really. So I suppose the takeaway from that is pick the right visit, pick the right meeting, and if it is a must-win deal, and the sales manager's coming in to add clout or responsibility or authority to that deal, then agree roles. And I used to agree like decoy words or things that if I was the sales manager, which meant the salesperson said, "Help, I need you to step in here" or something.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Little signals right. Or little cues.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't want to go into what coaching is specifically. We've done a lot about coaching, and I'm sure we'll do a lot more. But when is coaching the right scenario? When should we be providing coaching as a manager as opposed to telling them what to do? When is the right time then?
Yeah, a couple of things here. There is a question of time, but there is a question of people and situation. So, yeah, let me probably then bring the situational leadership here into the equation, because if you have in front of you as a manager a beginner, a sales beginner, a salesperson as a beginner, so he will need some guidance. He will need some boundaries as well, because he's not equipped. He doesn't know really how to do correctly the things to move to progress. So as a manager, you'll not coach this person. You will be direct. So it's a directive mode or directing mode in terms of the leadership. Okay, so when a person becomes more skilled, but has still to learn some things, then you are moving to a more, let's say, sort of coaching mode, asking questions, so that he can find his own way to progress. And last, you move, and two other aspects is that when people are very experienced, you are more in a supportive mode, even in a delegating mode. Okay, so that's one aspect I wanted to
that's a good point. Yeah, I've done that situational leadership, of course. Yes.
Yeah. And I always relate it to, I think a great thing to do here is to think of, there's a great analogy here. Most of us have, got what I would hope, or anyone who's listening to this has a sport they've loved playing or still play, or a hobby that they have, something where, and I remember the first time ever, let's pick golf. Of course, I was hopeless at it.
Yeah, but I still am.
Yes, yeah. No comment on that, Steve.
I'm saying that because I'm going on a golf break.
And I remember vividly the first golf lesson I ever had, and it was one of these mass lessons. There were other people there, and we all rocked up with all the gear, and as they say, all the gear and no idea.
Yeah, that's me.
And gee, I didn't even know how to stand and address the ball properly. I didn't even know how to hold the club properly. I was swinging away as if I was playing cricket, so it was fine, but it wasn't fine. So I was given really, really close instruction, and boy, I needed it. But I remember by the end of that lesson, I hit a drive which I would never have believed I could ever have hit had I not had that instruction. And then as the second lesson came along, I was still there, really keen. I was early, but it's interesting, isn't it? You notice the drop off, the number of people who started off hugely enthusiastic, and what do they call that first level of development of an individual in situational leadership? An enthusiastic beginner. Loads of those. Okay. And then directing and controlling is, being very directive is incredibly important to give that close instruction, to explain to someone how to do something. So I always think there's a great analogy there with sport at the end of the day.
The analogy I always use when I talk about this in training is I've got a bass guitar upstairs, which is dusty and probably going mouldy now because I bought it 5 years ago when I was going to become the new Jack Bruce or Geddy Lee or somebody. And I was super, super enthusiastic. But a few evenings of horrible buzzing sounds and sore fingers, I thought, this is a bit hard, really, And that's when I needed the sort of, the direction of somebody saying, this is how you do it, this is what you need to do, because there's only so much you can learn on YouTube videos and things, really. So I think putting this back into the world of sales, really. No, it's good. They're great analogies. You wouldn't, and I'm sure I've said this before on this podcast, but you wouldn't hire a new salesperson. I hope, dear listener, you wouldn't hire a new salesperson, brand new in sales, never sold before, straight out of the lab, and on the first day say, here's your keys to your car, here's your laptop, here's your phone, off you go, good luck, and we'll see you in 12 months' time. You wouldn't do that, would you? You need to give somebody strong direction, strong guidance, and that's the importance of the role there. Yeah. But I guess we can get it wrong with more experienced people, can't we, if we take that approach?
And you can probably, let's say, hit two balls at the same time there, because instead of guiding yourself, this new salesperson, you could delegate this to some team member who is very experienced.
That's a great point.
And who could then develop these coaching skills. And then you save time as a manager and work more on the strategic aspects.
Even more time, because the whole point of, coaching anyone is ultimately such that what's the end result? Well, what is it ultimately we're trying to achieve here? We're coaching, we direct people, then coach, ultimately support them. So ultimately we can delegate things to them and save even more time. So, and coaching for me, I think the pull factor for me, why I try to become a good coach, and for everyone out there who I tried to coach or successfully or unsuccessfully coach, I tried my best.
For me,
the huge pull factor for me was the amount of time that, it was one of these classics, invest time to save time. I just saved so much time, which allowed me to get on and do some of the stuff that actually I should have been doing, right?
So right.
I can't close all the deals. I'd love to, but I can't close all the deals. My team has to be capable of that. So I need to get them into the shape, to ultimately be able to do that. And so invest time to save time is a huge one for me in all of this.
Completely.
Yeah. Great mindset to have.
And a thought popped into my mind while we were talking, and forgive me guys, this isn't in our prep notes, so I'm going to hit you with this one left field. But what about when we're dealing with poor performance or performance issues? Where does coaching, what role has coaching got there, if any? Somebody's just not hitting the expected numbers. Where does that come in?
Yeah. I mean, I think on this, I think it's important to understand, when the coaching when the coaching conversation starts and ends, okay, and when it's time to move to a conversation, which is a more difficult conversation for most of us, about poor performance. They are two different conversations. However, as part of the remedy and some of the actions that you might identify as part of addressing poor performance, right, and improving someone's performance, part of that might be the coaching that you agree to give somebody. But you can't just coach somebody forever, okay, and hope that, the performance will improve. At some point, you need a really direct conversation. And, and that is a critical point to identify. It's easy to put it off. I have done. I'll hold my hand up.
I'm sure we all have,
I think we probably all have. You're right, Steve. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not a universal panacea, Pascal, coaching?
It's not. It's definitely not, because especially when you want to address performance and you have the evidence that the salesperson is not following, what could help him to be successful.
Yeah.
And is not willing also to do a number of things. You have to come to this crucial conversation and be very direct, setting expectations about what you expect from this person to do, while, as Jonathan said, still proposing your support. Okay, because that's important that you expect something, but
of course,
you can see that you are still around. But it's a combination of questioning, but also telling people this you are allowed to, this you are no more allowed to.
Allowed a strong word. What do you mean by allowed? Yeah.
Allowed to do,
Okay, got you. Yeah. Okay, got you. Okay. So let's put this all together then, because this episode was called The Sales Manager's Playbook. So, how do we put this in practice? You're a sales manager, you're managing a team of, 8 or 10 people, you've got all the day-to-day pressures, forecasting, managing your manager. That's a whole nother podcast for another day, I'm sure. All of that stuff. How do you put this all together in practice?
One key tip that I would give here would be, remember there's two types of coaching, right? There's the plan coaching that, should be, in calendars, booked with, you should have at least one coaching session booked with a member of your team. It's planned. It's very deliberate in the way we go about it. It will target almost certainly focus on a specific skill or capability required that you've either have said to the salesperson you want to work on with them, or you've asked for their feedback, etc., or you've had a joint conversation, of course. But the other piece is the spontaneous coaching, and I just think there's endless possibilities here. I mean, these are generally quite short sessions, 3, 4, 5 minutes, maybe a little longer. Fantastic at, building habits particularly. Okay. But the spontaneous coaching you can do And I think one of the best opportunities is when the salesperson rings in and says, I'm really struggling with this deal, or I'm really struggling to have the right conversation here, or I'm facing an objection, just don't know how to handle it, right? Those are ideal coaching opportunities. You could just say, this is what I would do.
And I guess that's the trap you can fall into when you're under pressure. You got the phone call, you're working through a million things. You're nodding, Pascal. Yes, is this something that rings true for you? I don't mean you did this, but I mean, is it something you can relate to?
Yeah. One of the traps is to get the day-to-day reality, just pushing you to stop the coaching and moving to the telling, approach. And this is where you need to be careful. And I like a lot what Jonathan mentioned, because there are at least two ways, the plan and scheduled coaching sessions. And the other one that you, as a manager, you have to be available for your people. You define time when you can, but around the coffee or whatever, after a visit or during a phone call, then be ready to move to the coaching mode when appropriate, but making sure that you have the time to do this. So, and back to what Jonathan said, active listening is key. So you cannot pretend to coach someone if you read your emails at the same time, or if you check your...
Yeah.
And so true. We're laughing, but it's so true.
So and many of us, we saw it. So what could you think about a manager who is not looking at you and just checking his emails? Why you say, I listen to you.
No, you won't. Yeah, that's another topic we're going to explore in the near future, by the way.
And I think I'd go back to something Pascal said earlier as well. I think for me that you don't have to do all of the coaching. You may have somebody else in your team who is potentially really interested in becoming a manager in the future, or they could just be a really experienced person that likes to contribute to the overall success of the team and actually enjoys taking on some coaching responsibility.
Be highly motivational for them, couldn't it? Really?
Well, exactly. That's right. Yeah, exactly. And I've seen so many examples of that over the years. And that peer-to-peer coaching, that for me is incredibly powerful. That starts to build a culture.
Yeah.
And I know we're in danger now, or I am, at least, of launching straight into everything about why coaching's so important, and it should be the number one tool in your bag.
It should.
As a manager, which it should be, by the way. But in terms of, putting it into practice, I think, that's another good one for me. Okay. It doesn't have to just be you. Okay. And if you're not coaching every day, I would challenge you and ask, are you really doing your job? It could just been a 2 or 3 minute coaching set call, right? Conversation with one of your team. But we have so many opportunities when we can coach and just help it. Just working on, really being conscious of what you're doing and crossing that line, to start spending more of your time coaching has a profound effect on your results ultimately.
And if you're listening to this, still listening, and you're screaming down at your phone or whatever device you're listening to us on, saying, I don't have the time to do all this stuff. I think as we've said already, it's time well spent really, because it's, the danger is we spend all that time managing spreadsheets, managing stuff, moving stuff around, feeding the workflows and the machines. We've all been there, I'm sure, on this call.
Yeah.
If you do take the time to coach properly, it's amazing how much more time you will get as a manager with your team.
You will. Yeah.
I think that's a key takeaway from me. Let me ask both of you what your takeaway would be. For anybody else, anybody listen to this call, one final sort of suggestion or one final thought for you for managers listening to this, thinking I'd like to do more of this. What would you say, Pascal?
Probably asking yourself as a manager, how much time do I spend coaching my people? If I look at my agenda, how much is planned?
Be really honest with yourself.
I spend,
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, coaching is a big rock. As mixing our training content here, but it is. Yeah. One from you, Jonathan.
I think I'm interesting one. This for me. I don't do this very often at the end of a podcast. I'm going to recommend you read a book.
That's a great idea.
There's a fantastic book. I've worn out several editions of this book because I've read it and read it and read it. And look, it is an easy read. If I can read it, there's no, everyone else should be able to read it, okay? Because I don't naturally kind of read stuff, okay? I have to discipline myself to read.
I know what you mean, yeah.
So there's a great book called Growing Human Potential by a guy called John Whitmore about coaching. It talks about called Growing Human Potential. It talks about the use of the GROW model. A long flight, you could read a fairly significant part of that book. Okay. And it's an easy read, and it's just superb in helping you understand the real power of being able to coach. And there's some really interesting stuff in there, some really thought-provoking questions as well, particularly around, and I'll just give you one example of, do you need to be a domain expert to be able to coach somebody effectively? There's a great question, eh? We have the whole podcast on that one, okay? Yeah. What a fantastic question. And actually, the answer to that is no, you don't. All right?
Well, no, you don't. Both of you operate as coaches for people as customers in our space, and you coach people in a variety of industries and backgrounds, and you can't be expert in all of those.
No. So I think that would be one thing. I think the other thing that just goes along with that, so I'm going to steal two here, Steve, would be, being directive, adopting that directing style, as we've discussed, has got a really important part to play. And I think the other thing I would recommend anyone does listening to this is go and learn about, if you haven't done so already, go and learn about situational leadership. Don't make the classic mistake of ignoring the word situational, right?
That's a great point.
The leadership style we adopt is purely situational dependent. It's dependent on the task or activity that actually the person is just about to or is going to undertake.
Absolutely.
It isn't just, I'm directive because they're a beginner. Hey, they may be fantastic at using social media and AI, right? You can just delegate a specific task to them in that instance.
This is a great example, Jonathan. Thank you.
Handling tough objections, you may need to be directive. So, and everything in between, which includes coaching.
Great points, both of you. We do cover, of course, situational leadership in depth on our sales management and leadership development training courses. I should get that plug in there before we go any further. Thank you both. Enjoy the weekend coming up. I am off on a golf trip, so
yes, of course you are. Yes.
If you are anywhere in the Gloucester vicinity, dear listener, I apologise if you hear the swearing in the background. My competitiveness is way above my ability in most sports, so there we go. If you have enjoyed this podcast, dear listener, then don't forget to give us a review, ideally a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. We would appreciate it. It does help us in lots of weird and wonderful ways. If you're interested in coming on the podcast as a guest panelist, then we'd love to hear from you as well. We've had a number of people actively working in the industry, shall we say, come on the pod in recent times, and it's always fascinating to get a fresh perspective. We absolutely don't have all the answers here in the team. It's great to have somebody else join us. So if you're interested in coming on and you work in our core markets of lab, life science, precision, process instruments, those kind of thing, then we'd love to hear from you. You can contact me or any members of the team through our emails, if you got them, through our LinkedIn's, or there is an email address, which is podcast@georgejames-training.com. We'll be back again in a couple of weeks with another episode of The Luxury of Choice. Until then, happy selling, and we will talk to you soon.